I'm sure you've heard the criticism from people like Jensen who say, well, Dario thinks he's the only one who can build this safely, and therefore, speaking of that word control, wants to control the entire industry. What do you think about that?
I've never said anything like that. That's an outrageous lie. That's the most outrageous lie I've ever heard.
Dario Amodei just drew a line in the sand, and it's not about technology. It's about the soul of the AI industry. We're going to break down his raw, unfiltered conversation because what he's saying signals a fundamental schism in how the leaders of this revolution see the future. First, let's get straight to the heart of it. Amodei was asked about the criticism from NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, who suggested he wants to control the entire industry. His reaction wasn't a prepared corporate statement.
So then I'm sure you've heard the criticism from people like Jensen who say, well, Dario thinks he's the only one who can build this safely, and therefore, speaking of that word control, wants to control the entire industry.
I've never said anything like that. That's an outrageous lie. That's the most outrageous lie I've ever heard.
By the way, I'm sorry if I got Jensen's words wrong, but
no. The words were correct.
Okay.
But
what he's saying is,
the words are outrageous. In fact, I've said multiple times, and I think Anthropic's actions have shown it, that we're aiming for something we call a race to the top. I've said this on podcasts over the years, and I think Anthropic's actions have shown it, where, with a race to the bottom, right, everyone is competing to get things out as fast as possible. And so I say, when you have a race to the bottom, it doesn't matter who wins, everyone loses, right? Because you make the unsafe system that, helps your adversary or causes economic problems or, is unsafe from an alignment perspective. The way I think about the race to the top is that it doesn't matter who wins, everyone wins, right? So the way the race to the top works is you set an example for how the field works.
That's not just a denial. The phrase outrageous lie is a shot across the bow. What he's really doing here is defining the battlefield. It's not about who builds AGI first. It's about what kind of industry we're creating. His concept of a race to the top is a direct repudiation of the Silicon Valley move fast and break things mantra. He's arguing for a model where companies compete on safety and responsibility, setting precedents that elevate the entire field. The implication is that others are in a reckless race to the bottom. This isn't a business disagreement. It's a moral and philosophical war for the future. And that visceral reaction, that anger, it doesn't come from nowhere. It's deeply personal, and it's tied to the very reason he's in this race to begin with.
I think AI has all of these benefits, and I want everyone to get those benefits as soon as possible. I probably understand, better than almost anyone how urgent those benefits are, and so I really understand the stakes. When I speak out about AI has these risks, and I'm worried about these risks, I get very angry when people call me a doomer. I got really angry when someone's like, this guy's a doomer, he wants to slow things down. You heard what I just said. My father died because of, cures that, could have happened a few years later. I understand the benefit of this technology. When I sat down to write Machines of Loving Grace, I wrote out all the ways that billions of people's lives could be better with this technology. Some of these people who on Twitter, cheer for acceleration, I don't think they have a humanistic sense of the benefit of the technology. Their brain's just full of adrenaline, and they're like, they want to cheer for something, they want to accelerate. I don't get the sense they care.
This is the origin story. This right here is the key to understanding Dario Amodei. He's not driven by a fear of dystopia, but by the ghost of a cure that came too late. When he talks about the benefits of AI, it's not an abstract concept. It's personal and it's urgent. This gives him the moral authority to reject the doomer label. He believes he understands the upside better than the so-called accelerationists, because for him, the stakes are measured in human lives. His push for safety isn't about hitting the brakes. It's about ensuring the vehicle doesn't crash before it reaches its destination. This personal urgency is fueled by a mathematical reality he believes most people, even inside the industry, are failing to grasp.
So when I look at it, I see this exponential and I say, look, people aren't very good at making sense of exponentials, right? Like, if something is doubling every 6 months, then, 2 years before it happens, it looks like it's only 1/16 of the way there. And so we are sitting here in the middle of 2025, and the models are really starting to explode in terms of the economy, right? If you look at the capabilities of the model, they're starting to saturate all the benchmarks. If you look at revenue, and Anthropic's revenue every year has grown 10x. Every year we're kind of conservative and we say, it can't grow 10x. This time, I never assume anything, and actually always am very conservative in saying, I think it's going to slow down on the business side. But we went from 0 to 100 million in 2023. We went from 100 million to $1 billion in 2024. And this year, in this first half of the year, we've gone from 1 billion to, I think as of speaking today, it's well above 4. It might be 4.5.
Those numbers are staggering. 0 to 4.5 billion in annual revenue in about 30 months. This isn't just a business update, it's hard evidence of the exponential curve in action. Amodei is saying that we are all suffering from a collective failure of imagination. We're looking at what feels like linear progress, but we're actually standing on a curve that's about to go vertical. His warnings about AI's impact on jobs and national security aren't coming from a place of fear, but from a simple extrapolation of this curve. He's not predicting the future, he's just doing the math, and he's terrified that no one else is taking it seriously. But writing an exponential curve like that requires a completely different kind of economic engine, one that breaks the normal rules of business profitability.
The big cost is the cost of training the next model. And I think this idea of like the companies losing money and not being profitable it's a little bit misleading. And you start to understand it better when you look at the scaling laws. So as a thought exercise, these numbers are not exact or even close for Anthropic. Let's imagine that in 2023, you train a model that costs $100 million. And then in 2024, you deploy the 2023 model and it makes $200 million in revenue, but you spend $1 billion to train, to train a new model in 2024. So, and then in 2025, the $1 billion model makes $2 billion in revenue, and you spend $10 billion to train the next model. So the company every year is unprofitable. It lost $800 million in 2024, and then in 2025, it lost $8 billion. So this looks like a hugely unprofitable enterprise. But if instead I think in terms of, is each model profitable, right? Think of each model as a venture. I invested $100 million in the model, and then I got $200 million out of the model the next year. So that model had 50% margins and made me $100 million the next year.
This is a profound insight into the new economics of AI. These companies aren't SaaS businesses. They are perpetual R&D machines. The profit from today's model is just a down payment on training tomorrow's vastly more expensive, vastly more capable model. Each individual model is a profitable venture, but the company itself is in a constant state of reinvestment for the next leap. This explains the insatiable need for capital. It's not about surviving, it's about affording the next step on the exponential ladder. The company is unprofitable because it refuses to stand still. This is the financial engine of the AI arms race. But money is only one part of the equation. The other is human talent, and Amodei is making a massive bet that his approach can win against brute financial force.
Our general response to this was, I posted something to the whole company Slack where I said, look, we are not willing to compromise our compensation principles, our principles of fairness to respond individually to these offers. The way things work at Anthropic is there's a series of levels. When candidate comes in, they get assigned a level, and we don't negotiate that level because we think it's unfair. We want to have a systematic way. If Mark Zuckerberg, throws a dart at a dartboard and hits your name, that doesn't mean that you should be paid 10 times more than the guy next to you who's just as skilled, who's just as talented. And my view of the situation is that, the only way you can really be hurt by this is if you allow it to destroy the culture of your company by panicking, by treating people unfairly in an attempt to defend the company. And I think actually this was a unifying moment for the company where, we didn't give in. We refused to compromise our principles because we had the confidence that people are Anthropic because they truly believe in the mission. I think that gets to kind of how I see this. I think that what they are doing is trying to buy something that cannot be bought, and that is alignment with the mission.
He's essentially saying that culture is a competitive moat. In a world where Mark Zuckerberg is personally calling researchers and offering fortunes, Amodei is betting on fairness, principles, and mission. The statement that they are trying to buy something that cannot be bought is a direct challenge to the entire ethos of big tech talent acquisition. He believes that the kind of people who can be bought are not the kind of people who can safely build the future of AI. This is a high-risk, high-reward strategy. If he's right, Anthropic will have a core of dedicated talent that money can't dislodge. If he's wrong, he'll be hollowed out. This is a battle for the human element of AI. And it's not just big tech he's pushing back against. He's also challenging one of the most sacred cows of the software world, open source.
This is all, I think, a long-winded way of saying I don't think open source works the same way in AI that it has worked in other areas. Primarily because with open source, you can see the source code of the model. Here, we can't see inside the model. It's often called open weights instead of open source to kind of distinguish that. But a lot of the benefits, which is that many people can work on it, that it's kind of additive, it doesn't quite work in the same way. I've actually always seen it as a red herring. When I see a new model come out, I don't care whether it's open source or not. Like if we talk about DeepSeek, I don't think it mattered that DeepSeek is open source. I think I ask, is it a good model?
Right.
Is it better than us at the things that's the only thing that I care about. It actually doesn't matter either way, because ultimately you have to host it on the cloud. The people who host it on the cloud do inference. These are big models. They're hard to do inference on.
This is a critical contrarian take that most people are missing. He's arguing that the playbook from the last 2 decades of tech doesn't apply here. Open source isn't a silver bullet for commoditization when the primary cost isn't the code, but the billions in GPUs required for training and the massive ongoing cost of inference. Calling it a red herring is a bold move. He's telling the market to stop getting distracted by licensing models and to focus on the only metric that matters, raw capability. This reframes the entire competitive landscape, suggesting the real moat is access to capital and cutting-edge research, not the openness of the model weights. All of this, the philosophy, the urgency, the economics, comes back to one central idea for Amodei. Focus on what's real, not the hype.
Yeah, it really depends what you mean by timeline. So one thing, and I've been consistent on this over the years, is there are these terms in the AI world like AGI and superintelligence. Like you'll hear leaders of companies say we've achieved AGI, we're moving on to superintelligence, or like it's really exciting that someone stopped working on AGI and started working on superintelligence. So I think these terms are totally meaningless. I don't know what AGI is. I don't know what superintelligence is. It sounds like a marketing term.
It is marketing.
It sounds like something designed to activate people's dopamine. So you'll see in public, I never use those terms, and I'm actually careful to criticize the use of those terms. But I think despite that, I am indeed one of the most bullish about AI capabilities improving very fast. The thing I think is real, that I've said over and over again, is the exponential.
This is his mic drop moment. By calling AGI and superintelligence meaningless marketing terms, he's directly attacking the narrative driven by his biggest rivals. He is positioning himself as the pragmatist, the scientist focused on the measurable, undeniable reality of the exponential curve, while others are chasing sci-fi branding. He's making the argument that the hype around AGI is a dangerous distraction from the very real, very powerful, and very disruptive technology that is already here and scaling at a terrifying rate. It's a call to get serious, to stop chasing dopamine hits, and to confront the reality of the exponential. So what this all comes down to is that Dario Amodei isn't just trying to build an AI. He is trying to build a new type of institution, one that can survive the gravitational forces of an exponential technology curve while being guided by a moral compass. The ultimate question is not whether AI will change the world, but whether we can build organizations that are responsible enough to wield it. What do you think? Is a race to the top on safety even possible? Or is the pull of the exponential simply too strong to control? Let me know your thoughts below, and if you want more analysis that cuts through the noise, make sure to like and subscribe.